Ahoy VC, welcome to the Personal Oasis. This is the Blind Island. I've got my coffee, and today we are going to be taking a look at another album for review. Again, this is purely my opinion. If you have a different one, feel free to leave it in the comments and let's get a dialogue going. Now, let's get on to the review. First and foremost, before I get started, I just wanted to say thank you so much to everybody in the vinyl community. We are almost up to 100 subscribers here on the Blind Island, and I couldn't be more thrilled about that. Been getting a lot of love from people. I especially just want to shout out Thomas Palom, who comments on every single one of these videos. Super nice guy. I also want to say thank you to Pastor Remaster and Randall Weaver, who also have been very encouraging, and John from the Digital Gramophone, who has really encouraged just taking the top 5 under 5 segment and making it my own. So I wanted to just thank everybody who's helping to make this channel a great success, and there are many others of you who are commenting on the videos, but I just want to say thank you so very much for doing that. That's why we're here, so we can grow in our knowledge of music together and share our love of it. And speaking of sharing that love, today I'm going to be sharing an album today from the fabled and famous Impulse record label. One that I'm very passionate about, from an artist who I believe has been lost to time. It is a record that is, it blends the classic with the modern of its time, and that would be Ask Me Now from the Pee Wee Russell Quartet on the Impulse label, released in 1965. First off, a little background information to this record. Pee Wee Russell was often classified, or is often classified, as a Dixieland player, playing in the traditional 20s, 30s style. He was known for playing with artists like Bix Beiderbecke, and even joining Louis Armstrong on a couple of occasions, really in that New Orleans Dixieland swing style. And that has definitely lost a lot of cachet, especially in contemporary reviewing of jazz as a history. I think that's kind of a shame, because there is still a lot to love about Dixieland jazz. It's just unfortunate that the technology of the time didn't really allow bands to play to their fullest extent. They often had to keep the songs to 2.5 minutes long just because of technology constraints. And even when the band started to get really cooking, they had to cut it off. However, if you look at the pieces and how extraordinarily complex they were, it really is a marvel. And I would have to say that Pee Wee Russell is a guy who knows exactly how to get inside of his instrument and get inside the listener's ear. He was a heavy drinker, almost lost his life in 1951 due to drinking too much. However, he got his life back on track and started to come out with a new quartet in the late 50s, a pianoless quartet, actually mirroring what Mulligan and Baker were doing with their quintet off in the West Coast, pianolists. And it sounded thoroughly modern with a bit of the classical interspersed within it. And that would be definitely what this album is. Pee Wee Russell was nearing age 60, and the fact that he came out with songs that were written by John Coltrane, Ornette Coleman, Thelonious Monk showed that he was willing to change with the times, where a lot of his other contemporaries were still trying to really stick to what they knew. And he had a way of blending what he knew with the modern, which is really a beautiful thing. So, which leads us to my thoughts and observations on what I think of this record. If I had to describe this album, I would have to just say charmingly pleasant. Everything about this album just screams classical beauty. Even though he chose a lot of modern songs, he was able to take his style and put a twist on it. The fact that he chose two monk songs, Ask Me Now and Hackensack, and was able to put his own personal spin and show that a piano wasn't necessarily needed in a monk song to create beauty, is something that truly is a work of genius. Marshall Brown joined Pee Wee Russell on this date. He played the alto trumpet and the valve trombone, and he plays with him note for note. They're just going back and forth. Marshall Brown gives Pee Wee Russell the space to solo freely over the harmony, and Marshall Brown also brings a great original tune to this record, Licorice Stick. It's a shame that he never really recorded much more than a few dates, because I think that he is just spectacular. He adds so much color and flavor to these proceedings. I am truly blown away by it. I think that a lot of people listening to this will be surprised that Dixieland clarinetist will sound so smooth, almost like a West Coast cool jazz musician. And yet, while there are definitely flares of experimentation, it still has this wonderfully smooth, cool atmosphere to it. It definitely reminds me of some Ellington dates, and he definitely pulls from those monk tunes the Ellington overtones that often proliferated Monk's own music. It is a gorgeous set. I would have to say it's there's rarely ever a sour note in it, and he even takes an old Irving Berlin tune in here and absolutely transforms it, makes it sound modern. It was written in the 20s and makes it sound like it was plucked from obscurity and breathes brand new life into it. I really enjoy this. The only thing that might take listeners out of it a little bit is that, yes, even though it sounded very pleasant and modern for the time, it sounds like a late 50s recording, even though it was recorded in 1965. The production value on it is spectacular, though, where a lot of these West Coast jazz people didn't have very crisp, clear production. This Impulse studio really lays it out smooth for everyone to listen to. However, it still does have a dated quality to it. It's not pushing the boundaries like some post-boppers and even bebop fans would prefer. So I think that it's still well worth checking out, but those who are really in the I like my music to be fast and experimental, you're not going to find much to enjoy here. As far as album highlights are concerned, I would say that Licorice Stick is just an absolute bop. It crushes every expectation that you might have that this is going to be a slow affair. It really does have they lay it down nice and thick. It is a super pleasant song to listen to. It's thick and syrupy, just like that Licorice Stick that they're writing about. I also really love Hackensack. I think that the monk tunes on here are probably the best of the bunch, but Hackensack just beats out barely by a margin because the tempo is kept up so very well throughout. And I would just have to say those are my album highlights, and an album proliferated with them. My final thoughts on this record are it's really an unsung gem. I think that Pee Wee Russell is an artist that deserves to be reevaluated to contemporary ears. And while it may not have the flash and flair of some other jazz musicians, it brings a pleasant quality that is often lost to modern listeners who are looking for the fastest and the loudest potential sound. So I would have to give this one a 4.5 out of 5. It's a near classic, but it is a masterpiece in Pee Wee Russell's catalog. So what do you guys think? Have you ever listened much to Pee Wee Russell before? What are your thoughts on early jazz? Let me know in the comments below, and I hope that you guys have a great day on your own personal oasis. Cheers.